Okay, any minute now, we expect some tough questions at the White House press briefing over the Benghazi attack and what the White House knew specifically. The attack on the U.S. diplomatic post in Benghazi last September 11th killed 4 Americans, including the ambassador to Libya, Christopher Stevens. Are you looking right now? Let's show you some live picture of the briefing room. Obviously, this is proof that we are monitoring the situation. Republican criticism is mounting following a week of hearings that got very heated on this topic. Critics like House Speaker John Boehner are accusing the State Department of using fake talking points about how the attack went down to protect President Obama's re-election campaign. And he wants the State Department to release emails. Now, the initial report blamed the attack on demonstrators angry over an incendiary anti-Islam YouTube video. Current top diplomat in Libya, Gregory Hicks, testified on Tuesday. He said there was no demonstration. He said there was an early report that the attack was coordinated by Islamic terrorists. So information keeps coming out. People start debating it. There's reporting from the Weekly Standard and ABC News that shows the administration did help edit the talking points about the Benghazi attack on 12 different occasions. What does that mean? Is that a lot? What was the nature of those changes? That's what they're trying to figure out. And it wasn't just written by the intelligence community, but there was a lot of input from the State Department as well. So let's bring in Chief Political Analyst Gloria Borger joining me down there from Washington, D.C. Let's begin with this. When something like this comes, the first thing we want to say is, well, this is partisan. This is right going left. At this point, isn't it fair to say, Gloria, this goes beyond partisan picking?
I think it does. I think it's sort of a window into the way Washington works, particularly when you're in the heat of a presidential election year. Let's take a step back, okay, Chris? Just set the scene. You're in the fall campaign. There is a terror attack, as we now know it, on September 11th. The State Department has been asked, as the administration's been asked, by the Congressional Intelligence Committees to provide them talking points. So when they're asked questions about this, they can actually talk about it with some amount of knowledge. What we're seeing in all of these emails going back and forth is the process at work, which is ugly, about how these talking points came to be, and in fact ended up, you see Ambassador Rice there, and ended up to be used by her on her famous round of Sunday talk shows.
Right, but
and
Gloria,
what we see in this process is that these talking points were edited to the point of inaccuracy. And the question is that a cover-up? Is it a whitewash? You know, we don't know the answer to that.
I know, and you took my question. That's exactly what I was going to ask you, right? Because that's what this gets to. 12, what is the context? It sounds like a lot, but we have to know the nature and the purpose of what those changes were, right? And how do we get that information?
Okay, so here's the context. Over at the CIA, they're looking at some of these points, which include mention of al-Qaeda. And there is a sense from some at the CIA, you know what, we don't want to tip anybody that we're investigating al-Qaeda on this, so let's take out some of the references to al-Qaeda. What the CIA left in, apparently, was the sort of broader context of al-Qaeda in Benghazi, in that part of the world. Those were eventually edited out. And there is an email obtained by ABC News from someone at the State Department which asks, why should we leave that in? Because, quote, it could be abused by members of Congress to beat up the State Department for not paying attention to warnings. So clearly, from a State Department official asking the question, why are we going to give members of Congress information, don't forget, in an election year, which they could turn around and beat us up with? And that's how you see this evolving. Everybody's got a different reason for editing it, and they edit it down to something that's totally, turns out to be, in fact, untrue.
Well, look, untrue, obviously, would be the bar of it being completely unforgivable, but simply playing politics with a situation where you need to know what happened. We lost lives there also winds up making this go past the line of politics. Let's bring in Jake Tapper, anchor of The Lead. Always good to have you.
Hey, Chris.
Good to see you, my friend.
How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well, and this situation is very troubling, and I think with good reason. People are coming forward saying, did we know this attack was coming, or did we not? Could we have done more? and gotten help there sooner, or could we not? These are legitimate questions, not just partisan pandering. Fair?
I think that's fair. I mean, throughout, obviously, there is this veneer of politics on all of this, and a lot of the people that have been involved in the criticism are very partisan Republicans. That has been of benefit to the White House, which has not wanted to talk about this at all. But having been one of those in the front row there at the White House while this was going on in September, very early on I was asking Jay Carney, and my colleagues were asking Jay Carney, sources are telling us this was a terrorist attack. Sources are telling us this had nothing to do with the anti-Muslim video. Sources are telling us that the State Department did not do enough adequate preparation or planning. And there was always just a stonewalling. That's not true. That's not what happened. When we started to break stories in September and October about the fact that there were people at the State Department who had been denying requests from diplomats on the ground in this very, very dangerous assignment, denying them. People in the White House were saying, your sources are wrong, you're getting your information wrong, that's not correct. It's now very, very clear from a number of career diplomats at the White House, not partisan Republican talking heads in Washington, D.C., but career diplomats who were taking these very dangerous assignments in places like Tripoli, that they were requesting security and the State Department was denying it.
Why? Any understanding of why they would deny it?
If you look at the investigation, the internal investigation done by Ambassador Pickering and Admiral Mullen, they say there just wasn't an understanding, a sufficient understanding of how great the dangers were. If one accepts that that is true, then there has to be some accountability. Who didn't understand that? Why didn't they understand that? Has there been any repercussions for those individuals professionally? So far, the answer seems to be no. There were 4 individuals who were reassigned, and there seem to be some questions right now about whether or not they were even disciplined, but no accountability on any high level.
But the most dangerous politics here would be those of avoiding this situation because of the partisan banter and not justifying those lives lost with the facts of what actually happened, and so that we can learn going forward.
And as Gloria talks about the context, it's also important to remember the political context. Not because we want to inject politics in this. This is a story about terrorism and career diplomats being killed. Because this took place during a presidential election, September 11th and September 12th. In the last 2 months of a heated presidential election, one didn't know how it turned out not to be a close election really at all, but in September nobody knew that. One of President Obama's talking points was that the senior leadership of al-Qaeda was on its heels, had been decimated, and that this was a success of his. Republicans say that the White House did not want to change from that message. Now, do we have evidence that that's why these talking points were changed? We have Victoria Nuland in these emails released saying that she didn't want Congress to beat up on the State Department for not heeding the warnings. Was that because of politics or because it was internal divisions? She wanted the CIA to be blamed more, not the State Department. We still have to find out a lot more.
You're going to unpack it on the lead today?
We'll unpack it on the lead. We'll try to.
4 o'clock?
4 o'clock Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific.
Every day?
Every week.